Judge Cannone, I've a question for you. We all have preconceived notions of what it's like to be a judge. Could you describe the transition from law practice to the judiciary and the realities of being a judge? Let us know what you've observed regarding tenure on the bench and the lessons that you've learned on the evolution of a judgeship.
Okay, a little bit. All right, thank you. And I do sort of want to piggyback on what Judge Gant just answered. So if you have the opportunity to say something good about someone, why wouldn't you? If you get called, I can't tell you how many letters I've written on behalf of lawyers. I've testified before the Governor's Council many times before I was a judge, and I testified on behalf of opposing counsel. I testified on behalf of Bob Cosgrove and Tom Finnegan, and I'm sure there were others who were prosecutors when I was a public defender. So I, it's sort of what I would call tips. And I know I wasn't supposed to really talk about this, but my situation's a little bit different. I never wanted to be a judge. I never thought about being a judge. I went to law school so I could be a public defender. That's all I wanted to do with my life. I was doing it very happily for 24 years. And Judge Elizabeth Butler, who was just wonderful, I appeared before her many, many times in Superior Court. She approached me and she said, I was talking to the governor's office and they need more women judges. I'm like, I agree. And she said they need more criminal lawyers as judges. I'm like, I agree. She said, well, you have to apply. I'm like, oh, I hadn't expected that. I talked to her and I applied. And the things that I just did automatically as a lawyer were things that I think most lawyers or many lawyers out there watching this program, don't worry if you don't have a big resume for things that you think judges need to have, but just, basic things. Judge Peterson talked about this a bit. Just treat people well. You'd be surprised how far that goes. Because, when they do due diligence and when people call around on anything about you, they'll hear great positive things and it just makes it so much better. Another thing is, I don't think I have ever said no to any professional request. I can't tell you how many MCLEs, social law, teaching at local law schools. And I've done them at the time when I was a lawyer. I did them because I learned so much. And still, as a judge, I like to do them because, again, I learned so much from the panel. So if you do things like that, if you treat people well, and number one, that's what we used to tell all our lawyers and anybody I've supervised or taught, just don't lie. It's rule number one. It's basic. Just never lie as a lawyer, certainly never lie as a judge. Then you don't have to worry about anything. And that will get you a long way. So that's sort of what that question pushed me out. So I was a public defender for 25 years. And one of the things that was a big change for me is the lack of freedom. Like we had our own caseload, we were in court, we'd be able to stop and get a cup of coffee on the way back from court with your friends. You'd go to the jail when you wanted to, you drive. So there was so much more freedom. And, some people might look and say, well, the 9 to 4 hours sound pretty good to me. It's a lot less work than what I'm doing as a lawyer. And I just sort of want to dispel that. Um, it's, I'll get back to that in a minute. But the other thing that I missed was at CPCS, there really is this collegiality. Everybody has a shared goal. We were all really like-minded. And when I went to the court, when I became a judge, there were a lot of different people, a lot of different mindsets. It's a good education, but that took some time to get used to. And the personal part, I know you're talking about reading the executive order, but read the entire code of judicial conduct before you apply. Know what's expected of you because it's not just your conduct from 9 to 4, it's what you do for the rest of your life. People out there see you. I'm fortunate. My husband and I are very boring. We have always been boring. So I didn't have to really adapt my social life really in any way. But people are watching you. In fact, when I first started, one judge that was training me said that people commented because when she and her husband went to church on Saturday nights, he would get into the pew before her. And he shouldn't do that. She should go first. So you never know what people are going to pick up on. So just be aware of that. Read the code before you even start to know to have an understanding. You wanted me to talk a bit about the realities of the job. So when I just said the 9 to 4 hours might sound really good. Now, as lawyers, no doubt lawyers work very, very hard. But I think it's a mistake if you think, I don't want to work so hard anymore. So I'm going to go get those 9 to 4 hours and 9 to 4:30 that I see on the bench. It's really not a retirement job because the judges that I know um, work really hard to get it right. And it doesn't just come easily by showing up 5 minutes before going out on the bench. So a typical day, I'm fortunate, I was a district court judge for about 4.5 years. I've been a judge since 2009, and I've been on the Superior Court since 2014. So a typical district court day, as Judge Baruch and Judge Mehta could tell you, district court BMC, I mean, you come out there and you've got 40 cases on the list, maybe. You've got arraignments, you've got bails that are coming up. Someone's moving for dangerousness. Somebody comes in and says, we need to get a doctor. We need an evaluation here for competency before we can arraign the guy. There are probation matters. There are witnesses who haven't shown up. Somebody comes in and says, I've got a harassment order that needs to be heard. There are just so many things flying at you at once. It's really hard work. I always say that I wish judges on the Superior Court and the appellate courts could go spend a day in the district court or BMC and just see how different it is. The speed, the knowledge of so many different subjects. So it's not just a 9 to 4. And the other thing that sounds so trivial is judges have to pay attention to everything that's going on in the courtroom, which can be really hard, especially in the district or BMC, because when you're a lawyer, you can get up and walk out while somebody else is doing a plea, or there's a motion that's going to be heard. You've got 15 minutes. The judge has to sit there and be aware of everything, including security and watching everything, see who's coming, who's going. So there's all of that. So it's a lot of work. It's a great, great job. And a little plug for the district court. I felt that I helped so many people on a daily basis in the district court. The work they do there is really amazing. Superior Court, if you want to describe just walking into a civil session the first day of the sitting, you come in. First, you've got these pile of 9As that you have to do in your lobby. You walk out, you've got a trial the next day. So you're trying to figure out what's going on with that trial. You're looking at the file maybe for the first time. Then you've got all these afternoon motions that you have to read because it's not fair to the lawyers to have a hearing if you haven't read their motion and their pleadings. It's so much like that. And it's constant. It's every day. And it's a lot of work. So please don't think this is a retirement job. It will be easy for you to just go and become a judge. So there's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work in the beginning, and it's a lot of work straight through to the end. Bob Kane was a great Superior Court judge. He sat down in Bristol. He had been a district court judge. He had been a prosecutor for a long time, but he was also a mass defender before then, too. So when I was looking to apply to the Superior Court, I went and talked to him. And he told me he had all this experience. He told me that from October until April or May, he went in the courthouse every single Saturday. So one day a week, he was in doing work. And so then I knew that's probably what I will be doing. So it's just, you get an idea. Not everybody does that. I do a lot of programs. I do a lot of programs for the social law and for other places, and I really enjoy that. So, and I see people here that I've put on those programs. So they're the people who also don't say no. I see Judge Mehta, Judge Baruch, Judge Gant, and I'm going to call them again. And they say yes, and they do these things. And, everybody benefits from it. But it is a lot of work. And one of the questions earlier about, well, I'm not a trial lawyer, or I don't have any civil background. To the trial lawyers out there who are looking to apply for a judgeship, one of the best pieces of advice I got was from Chief Justice Linda Conley of the District Court when I started. Now, like Judge Gant and Judge Baruch, I spent basically every single day of my career in court. And she said to me, let yourself be a rookie. And it was great advice. She said, you've been in court, but you've never been on this side of the bench. And there were so many things that are so different. I remember being nervous about being able to fill out all those forms that you fill out as a district court judge, as you're going, just trying to get everything done. And Gil Nato, who's a great judge down in Fall River, looked at me like I had 10 heads. Like, that's what you're worried about? But it was. So it was a good piece of advice from her. When I started in the Superior Court, I was in Dedham for a long time, and I would walk with Judge Garsh and Judge Wilkins. And we would have this discussion about whether they felt that to be a good Superior Court judge, all you needed to be was really smart. And my view was what you really needed was experience. And we were both we were back and forth in those two camps. But the real reason, or the real answer really, is some combination of the two, right? But I agree with Judge Gant about, if I didn't have any civil experience coming into this years and years ago, and I did go to a couple of MCLEs at the time, just to hear what the lawyers were talking about in the civil stuff, and just to, not to be able to try and, hold my own at the JNC, but just to have an understanding and start to think about whether this is something I really thought I could do. So there's a ton of education programs available at this point, more so than there was then. The changes in the court. So I started practicing in 1985. That's when I first appeared in Superior Court. And most of the judges were old, probably my age or younger now, but old white men from Weston or Wellesley. And I remember thinking at the time, as did my colleagues, that they had so little in common with my clients, and how hard that was. It's not to say they were all bad. There were good judges. There came to be more women in the Superior Court after a while, and that really, I think, made a difference. The district court, I have to say, when Paul Dolly was chief, and now through Chief Justice Forts, I've seen the level of the district court be raised so much. We have so many lawyers there, judges now, who were lawyers in court every day. We've got a good mix of criminal lawyers and prosecutors. When I first became a judge in the district court, the only other public defender, or the most recent public defender appointed, was my good friend Jeff Packard, and that was 7 years prior. When I got to the Superior Court, there hadn't been a former full-time public defender on the Superior Court, and I don't know how long. I don't think we could have named one. And now, in the last couple of years, we've got Judge Gant. It started with Sarah Hamilton coming to Superior Court, full-time public defender. Karen Goldenberg did a lot of public defender work and did other stuff. Judge Gant, a great example. They're a full-time public defender coming to the court. So we're seeing a bit of a change like that. The big thing that the district court has that is so wonderful is that it's a diverse court. Our court is not as diverse as it should be, or as we all want it to be. But the district court and BMC have that really all over us. And I know that the Superior Court's doing everything they can, or the governor's office is doing everything they can to make it a more diverse court. It just makes it a better court. And hopefully we'll get there. And another piece of advice, just a little one from Chief Justice Fabricant, when I told her that I was looking to go to the Superior Court, she said to me, she said lots of nice things. And then she said, the hardest part's going to be calling judges who you appeared before by their first names. And that really is a real, Ira still calls me Judge Cannone, and I've known him for a long time. So, all right, there's that. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
It's like hearing your teachers call each other by their first name. It's very disturbing.
Yes. Yeah, that was great. Thank you. We do have a question, and it's a very interesting question from the audience. Can you speak about the impact of prior political activity on the application process? Sitting judges cannot participate in politics and campaigns, but does that mean that folks who are interested in applying for judgeships should also stay away from public support of political candidates and causes?
So I was never involved in any supporting anybody politically with money or anything. It just wasn't something. I was a public defender. I made no money. So there was that part of it. There are um, there are opinions that are written on these things, these questions for when you are a judge. But I think you could get guidance from the governor's office on that. One other thing, sort of aligned to that, if people think that there's something in their past that will prohibit them from applying, it's a different court than it was when I first applied. There are, life's different now, right? It costs, $100,000 a year to go to law school. Student loans are crazy. There are people, if you have defaulted on student loans, that doesn't disqualify you from this. If you or somebody in your family has gotten in trouble in the past, that doesn't disqualify you from this. Don't be afraid to apply. Real life happens. We're much further along now than we were back in 2009 when I applied. So don't be afraid of those things, but you should get guidance on that. From the BBO could probably tell you too. But anybody else know better than I on that? I'm sure.
Just be transparent and honest about everything.